days like today that show why it is so important that we have at least 34 entries gunning for the field of 33 in the Indianapolis 500. Can't describe it. Emotions on pit lane today are unlike some that you will ever see in sports. The exhilaration, the thrill, the unknowns, the absolute gut-wrenching pain that I saw on pit lane today. Hope you were watching either in stands or on TV, and if you didn't, we'll break it down all today for you here on this latest edition of Pit Pass Live. I'm Nathan Brown, your motorsports insider here with the Indianapolis Star, and we were on hand today for day 2 of qualifying for the 107th running of the Indianapolis 500 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Here's what happened. We had what we call the last chance qualifier, the bottom 4 cars from Saturday's day 1 of qualifying, and they made up 2 teams. 3 from Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing, Christian Lundgaard, Jack Harvey, and Graham Rahal. And they were up against Dale Coyne Racing's Sting Ray Robb for those 3 spots on the last row of the field. The first 30 qualified yesterday. They were safe. These 4 went to bed last night knowing that one of them was not going to make the race. They're all full-time entries, which, as we saw back in 2018 with James Hinchcliffe, is gut-wrenching. I think Hinch was 5th in points at the time coming into the 500, and it ruins not only any sort of momentum, but the points that you would take away from this race, which now is not double, but still immensely important to try and build upon seasons. Now, all 3 of these drivers at some level, all 4 of these drivers at some level had not had the start to seasons that they were looking for. Sting Ray Robb is a rookie, bit of a rocky start at Dale Coyne Racing. He's had 2 DNFs his last 2 times out, but we know Dale Coyne Racing can produce some great cars here. It was a little bit of a surprise yesterday to see his teammate David Malukas fighting just to make that field of 30 that would be guaranteed. He was out of the field at one point with just minutes to go, bumps his way in, will start 23rd next Sunday, but his teammate Sting Ray Robb did not know the same. Overnight, Dale Coyne told us earlier today that they looked at some of the changes that they had made on David's car last minute and applied some of those to Stingray's car. They went out. He, I believe, went out second of the group of 4 in their initial runs, and that was all he needed. He will start 32nd. Christian Lundgaard will start 31st. He went out first, put up the top time, didn't really have to worry much that whole hour because as we only had 4 cars in that session, you run through the order once, and there's really only 1 car that needs to run again, because if you leave your pit box, this is an important part of today that isn't always the case. If you leave your pit box for any reason, you forego your time. So if you were one of those 3 guys, after we've run through that line once, if you leave, you're sacrificing your time that is currently in the Indy 500 field. Maybe you do that in some cases to try and make it better, take yourself off of that chopping block like Graham Rahal was for so much of today. Maybe you are running at the very last minute trying to use up time because you believe the person that is out of the field, if they get a chance to run those last couple minutes and make that last run, you believe that they're going to bump you out. So you feel like you have to make the run yourself, use up that time, and put it in your own hands instead of theirs to try and make your way into this field. So we saw those first 4 run. Jack Harvey took quite some time to cool down his engine, even turned a couple laps. I don't even think it was a full 4-lap run, but turned a couple laps trying to get some more air into those side pods to try and cool that engine down. He, at that time, did not have a time in the field, so it didn't matter that he left. And then we saw again with, I would say, it was about 5 minutes left. Jack goes out. He makes a run that's better than his first one. He ran 2:28.477 on his first 4-lap average early on in that session. Goes 2:28.929, but that is still a little bit more than 0.2 miles an hour over 4 laps, behind Graham Rahal's 4-lap average that he set in his one and only run of the afternoon of 2:29.159. So Jack Harvey's team brings him back in. He told us after the last chance qualifier that they took a little front wing out, actually added some downforce because he felt like they were too trimmed. He was sliding around, was an inefficient level of trim that they had out there, and it was taking some time and some speed away from him. So they go back out literally, I think, with about 90 seconds left on the clock. So we know as soon as he leaves his pit box that his run is going to be the last one that we see out there. When you do 4 laps here at the 500, plus your warm-up lap, it's going to take you somewhere around 3 minutes. So Graham Rahal knew when Jack went out on track that Jack was going to decide their fates for the 500. Either he was going to not be able to quite hit Graham's 4-lap average, or he was going to bump him out. So Graham's sitting in the cockpit of his car, just watching, waiting, wishing, hoping. His father, Bobby Rahal, the co-owner of Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, is sitting on the team's of the number 15 team's pit box, really conflicted, I think, is what Bobby told us a little bit. He's, on one hand, he's hired Jack Harvey. This is the second year of a 2-year deal. Jack's had a really tough time adjusting to this team for whatever reason, and Bobby knows that Jack making the field and coming from behind knows what kind of momentum that could bring Jack and the number 30 people ready Honda program. At the same time, Bobby told us, he tries his best to, not have favorites, to not be rooting for one car or the other. But when you're a dad, I think in some level it's kind of impossible. And when Jack crossed the start-finish line at the end of his 4th lap, we were watching Bobby, and he, threw his head down a little bit, threw his fists down, yelled something, and I don't know that it was anger. It was just, I think it just was emotion. He was frustrated for Graham. He was, I'm sure, in some level, once he got his wits about him, happy for Jack, but it was an incredibly tight margin there when Jack crossed the start-finish line. Finished with a 4-lap average of 2:29.166 miles an hour again. That's up against Graham's 2:29.159. So that's 0.007 miles an hour over the course of 10 miles. So Graham Rahal goes home tonight, knows he will not be running in next Sunday's Indianapolis 500. He's been doing this well over a decade, getting close to 20 years since he was an 18-year-old and came out here, ran the 500, grinded, tried to keep his dream alive. At sometimes wasn't even running a full season, but eventually found his way to Chip Ganassi Racing, and after that, Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. And since then, he's been the cornerstone of this team. He secures sponsorship. He is the face. As he told us this week, a lot of times these sponsors come, and his name is in the contract because they want to work with Graham Rahal. Of course, this is a storied team. Bobby Rahal won this race in 1986. He won an IndyCar championship. In 1992, he's been around the sport. In some ways, in so many ways, he is IndyCar. But Graham will be watching this big race from home. We got a chance to talk to Bobby after some things died down, gave us some of his thoughts on pit lane. It was a tough but very real, raw, emotional interview. Hear those words from Bobby Rahal.
Oh, I feel bad for him. I feel worse for the cars than we do our drivers. We got to get on acting like that. But I'm sure Graham will stay and be a teammate this whole next week. So.
Is that one of the hardest things you've ever had to do, Hug? Congratulate Jack Harvey and hug your son? Seriously.
Jack hasn't had many things to cheer about this year, or last for that matter. So, I'm happy for Jack. I really am. And this might be the one thing for him mentally that gets him going again. Naturally, I'm really disappointed for Graham. But what can you say?
You're a guy who's been there, done that. I mean, 1993, the sun came up.
It hurts. Believe me, it hurts.
Yeah.
But we'll get better by this. That's all you can do is it's unfortunate you had the weight jacker break. That should have, would have, could have.
After the dust settled, we also got a chance to speak with Jack Harvey, and you might expect, and I think he showed some of this maybe immediately after he got out of the car, this excitement, happiness, elation, joy, satisfaction that he had weathered this whole storm. He's talked all this week about not having a whole lot of confidence and not feeling comfortable in this car and wondering if he had it in him to put his foot to the floor for 4 laps when he's got a car that doesn't have balance, doesn't have speed, and they don't really know where they're going with it. But after things settled for Jack a little bit, he was really conflicted. Graham Rahal is one of his best friends. He's been his teammate for the last year and a half here at Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. Jack left his long tenure at Meyershank Racing in part because he felt like there was promise. This was maybe going to be a step up in his career, and he could help build a growing team that Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing was. They were going from a long-time 2-car program to 3 cars, and that was an opportunity that Jack was really excited about, and I think he was really excited to have a chance to work with someone like Graham, who gets a lot of flack from folks outside this paddock, but is really well respected in so many ways for so many reasons. So for Jack to know that in order to get what he wanted out of this afternoon, it was going to take knocking Graham out of this race. They spoke last night pretty frankly and admitted to each other that they knew unless something crazy happened, it was going to come down to one of them that wasn't going to make this race. They didn't know exactly what Stingray Robb had, but he had always been just a little bit ahead of at least one of these Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing cars. So they felt like it was probably going to come down to a duel between them, and may the best man win. Jack told us in the post-session press conference it was almost like a I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry feeling he has for Graham. Again, a really raw, emotional, real interview here with Jack that we had on pit lane. Hear those thoughts from Jack Harvey.
Honestly, it kind of was a bit of a blur at this point. I hate what this means. Knocking Graham out of the race for our team, for him. I think he's the most underrated driver on the grid, in my opinion. One of the best teammates I've ever had, so it's not a great feeling. In terms of the last run, the goal was honestly just to try and forget what had happened in the first 2, stay as open-minded and optimistic as possible, and that's why I want to say thanks to the team, especially number 30, People Ready Car, everybody on the timing staff. I asked them directly, I was like, is there even any point doing this? Going and even trying again. The car's hot, all these things, and they were like, yeah, we think we can do it. Just try and do 4 good laps, and did 4 enough laps to get in. So I don't know, really. It's just kind of a whirlwind moment, really.
On the flip side of all of that tension from the last chance qualifier, it's almost easy to forget we had a poll to decide for the greatest spectacle in racing. It was going on almost immediately after all of that madness between Graham Rahal and Jack Harvey. I was doing interviews on pit lane with Bobby and with Graham and with Jack, literally as cars were on track, a couple tens of yards away, running 235, 237 into turn 1. And it was hard to kind of in the moment remember and realize all of the crazy action that's going on around you. But when the dust settled, Alex Palou, a guy who finished second in this race in 2021 to Helio Castroneves in his historic 4th win, a guy who finished second, who started in the middle of row 1 last year to his teammate Scott Dixon, is now a pole sitter for the Indianapolis 500. And he did it in pretty spectacular fashion. Several drivers today in their 4-lap runs set repeatedly what was for them for a short time the second fastest qualifying effort in the Indianapolis 500. We obviously know Arie Luyendyk set a record that may not ever be broken, certainly not for a couple years until we get a new car and a new package, something well in the 236s. But Alex Palou, after finishing, I believe, 4th in the Fast 12 earlier in the afternoon, goes out and posts a time that the likes of Rinus VeeKay, Santino Ferrucci, and Felix Rosenqvist can't touch. We don't often see that when we're in the afternoon. It's from 5:15 to 5:45. This track is cooling down even just a degree or two every few minutes there for everyone's run. You typically see those guys that go last are pretty hard to beat. We saw it last year with Scott Dixon. Alex Palou was sitting on provisional pole, but he knew Dixon was going to go out, and I don't think he had a whole lot of confidence that Dixon wasn't going to beat him. But we saw Palou go out there, post a time that was incredibly close to what Rinus VeeKay would go on to post immediately after him. Listen to these laps from Alex Palou and Rinus VeeKay in order of them. Palou, 235.131. Rinus matched that pretty closely with a 235.019. Alex Palou with the second lap at 234.399. Rinus a little faster, 234.403. Palou, 233.930 on his third lap. Again, Rinus ahead of him, 233.982. Palou, his last lap, 233.415. Rinus, 233.444. But that advantage he had on that first lap ended up being enough. Palou prevailed by a pretty similar margin to what we saw the 33rd and 34th spots of this race pan out. 4-lap average of 234.217 miles an hour to Rinus VeeKay's 234.211. So those two young drivers will make up the two spots on the inside. In the middle of row 1, they will share row 1 with Arrow McLaren's Felix Rosenqvist. Row 2 for next Sunday's Indianapolis 500 is Santino Ferrucci on the inside of row 2. Important to note that number 4 spot, AJ Foyt, his last 2 Indy 500 wins as a driver also came from the 4th row. He was also quick to point out, and I got a chance to talk to AJ. I encourage you to keep checking back in for that story that will be on IndyStar.com later this week. AJ was quick to point out he's never won this race from pole, and he's never won this race, neither has his team, from the front row. So, Santino Ferrucci starts 4th, Pato O'Ward 5th, and Scott Dixon, last year's pole sitter in the maybe arguably dominant car the last 2 or 3 years, he starts this race 6th. Crazy day at the track here. Alexander Rossi 7th, Takuma Sato 8th, Tony Kanaan 9th, Marcus Ericsson 10th, Benjamin Pedersen, a rookie, will start 11th, and Will Power is 12th. And that's what we saw today. Incredible action, incredible drama, incredible emotion. This is why we love this sport. This is why we love this race. This is why we love this weekend, and why we love it even more when it has more than 33 cars going for that field of 33. So there we have it. Keep checking in on IndyStar.com. I'm sure we've got a gallery up already of the emotions and everything that captures exactly what this day meant here at the track on pit lane for these teams and these drivers and these team owners. We'll have a lot more stories on IndyStar.com, several from me that I'll be working on well late into tonight. And we'll have a lot more for you this week as well. This is, I think, the best week of the year. It's a grind for those of us that cover this sport, but I write some of my favorite stories all year in this week, and I hope you guys continue to read them online. Subscribe if you don't already. I believe it's $1 for 3 months right now, and you get what I confidently believe is the best, most thorough, most well-rounded motorsports, IndyCar, and most importantly, Indianapolis 500 coverage that you're going to find anywhere. Please join us later on this week for more episodes of Pit Pass Live. I'm Nathan Brown, Motorsports Insider for the Indianapolis Star.